Hello, and welcome to As the CMMC Churns. I'm Matt Titcomb, the CEO of Peak InfoSec, an authorized CMMC third-party assessment organization. I'm also a CMMC certified professional/assessor and also a CMMC curriculum developer. Today's episode, as you can see, is Apple macOS and CMMC. So as a Mac shop and an Apple fan, we like this one. This is one of our preferred solutions when we're working with clients. And guess what? Let's just sum all this right up front with the big bottom line. Your organization can be a 100% Mac shop and get certified. You want to know why I know that? We are one. Peak InfoSec is a 100% Mac shop. We only use Macs. And yes, there's people saying, oh, Matt, you're giving away too much operational security, intelligence, and all that other stuff. Yeah, I'm sure China already knows that, and probably Russia, etc. And this is just the operational reality of being in the business we're in. Now, there are challenges with Macs, and it is not as easy as it sounds. So what we're going to do in this CMMC Churns is kind of walk through those hurdles and then really walk through some of the cool things that are being done to not only get rid of those hurdles, just to actually take you right to the finish line. So the first holders is culture. I love these commercials back in the days of PC and Mac, and these were the best. And sadly, they're still true today. The fundamental reality is that the Mac is a better computer overall. It's far more stable. It lasts longer out of the box. It's mostly because of its Unix undercore. It really does help that. Now, it is different from Windows, and I'm a weird person. I'm trilingual, Macs, Windows, and Linux. Don't care. I can jump on them all. Mac is still the preferred solution. Now, the reality of using Macs very simply is Windows has always been very business-centric. The Mac community has always been very creative-centric. So when you think of Lord of the Rings, it was not created, edited, and put together on Windows. No, it was created and put on a Mac because it's got the power, the capability to handle that. So again, we kind of do the same thing here when we're looking at understanding the cultural underpinnings behind the two communities. Now, because of that reality, Windows has always been more business managed. The creative people that are primarily using Macs tend to create independence, and that kind of creates its own set of challenges, especially when it comes to applying separation of duties and least privilege, especially the non-use of admin roles. Macs support that. Like Windows, it's native that everybody that starts in and gets an account ends up with an admin account. It's just harder culturally, I find, in all honesty, to pull back on Macs on this one. Now, the other thing is going all the way back to Windows NT 4.0. Yes, we're talking the 90s. Windows has been primarily managed by the Windows Active Directory server, the NT servers, etc. Macs realistically only entered central management with the cloud. There were the macOS servers. They did an okay-ish job, but not very good about centrally managing and setting up your Macs in your environment. So the macOS servers were kind of there, but we really didn't use them, just to be honest. Now, bottom line, and that is still the way it is today, fundamentally, Macs are far more secure out of the box than Windows. There's a reason why we work on Macs, because when we drop into client environments that are just getting started, i.e. they only pass their physical security controls, I want to jump in with the most locked down, hardest to crack device there is, and that's going to be a Mac. And so we use that for our protection just because we understand the risks and everything else involved. Can they be hacked? Oh, yes. Is there malware for them? Oh, yes. Do you need antivirus and anti-malware? Oh, yes. So I'm not saying they're not secure and they don't have problems. I'm just simply saying if I'm going to ask to defend myself, I'd rather be using a Mac than Windows when it comes down to it. Now let's talk through the other last thing that's really going on is that with Tim Cook running Apple and now Nadella at Microsoft, we really do see Apple moving into the mainstream business. This is really a credit of Nadella at Microsoft, just to be honest with you. When Ballmer left and he took over, he said, I don't care about the platform. Ballmer was very much anti-Apple, anti-anything other than Windows. You see Nadella now adopting Linux in the Azure cloud and everything else. Really is the core of Azure. It's really Linux. And everything else. And they are really rolling out multi-OS, truly approaching the entire ecosystem from that point of view, which is awesome. Now, when we get into the next set of hurdles is authentication. This is one of the problems is that fundamentally right now today, macOS has no native integrations into Azure Active Directory. So, for example, when you're doing an Azure AD join your Windows device to Azure AD, you're doing both device and user. Unfortunately, we can join device, but we can't join user. Now, there are some options in this space. Apple Business does have some abilities to do this where you can manage some of these things. It doesn't work well with GCC yet, and it's kind of limited for what it does. It's a little bit more on the mobile device management side than it is really user management. JAMF is the big one in the market right now in the Mac community. This does integrate with Azure Active Directory and the user accounts to centrally manage and control them. The good news is it also integrates with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, both commercial and in GCC High. So the one that's coming is Microsoft. Their integrated Microsoft single sign-on plugin, etc. That is coming soon. It's in preview on commercial right now. That will bring Active Directory user integration to macOS. This is one of the benefits also where Tim Cook and Apple has also started to make their ecosystem start to tie to these other cloud-based access control mechanisms like Azure Active Directory. That facilitates it for all of us. And again, these are the things that are really pulling Apple into really being a true business platform. Now, the other option is manual. If you're really small business and people are local, you're not geographically separated, manual does work. It just means, when somebody needs to have something installed, you're either remoting in via Teams or something, or they're basically having to do a face-to-face patch. It's just kind of the options that are really right now. There was a couple others out there, but these are the ones we tend to stick with right now. Multi-factor authentication is also something else that's a challenge within Macs, and it's really no different of a challenge than it is for Windows. So out of the box, macOS has no native MFA. The newest versions of Mac Pro desktops or Mac Pro laptops got rid of the touch bar where you could do the finger biometric. Realistically, that was only good after you've logged in once, so really didn't work at the point of login. Now, there are changes, especially with the latest version of Centura. So Passkey has come out. Now, that works great on cloud apps where I can use my phone to do MFA to all the cloud apps. Real problem is that now brings iCloud into scope. Ah, crap. Yes, you don't want to bring iCloud in scope because iCloud is not FedRAMP certified. And once you start that, documents start going in there. And as much as I love iCloud on personal Macs, try and stay away from it as much as you can on professional Macs. Cisco Duo, hands down, is our bottom line go-to solution today. It handles Macs, Linux, Windows, does MFA for log-on, offline, online, etc. Cisco Duo solves the problem, so it really is the go-to solution. YubiKey is also the other one that you can also do, and it does solve the that keeps it at that FIDO2 level. That is our next go-to, and it really does work well. It's just harder to set up and use. And if you lose that key, you may not have access to your Mac. So have two. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, let's talk Microsoft 365 and Intune. If you guys do not know what that picture is, that is Gallagher. He's a comedian from the 70s and 80s whose thing was smashing watermelons with a big sledgehammer, as you can see. Well, why are we showing that? Well, guess what? Microsoft 365 and Intune is what Gallagher is to a watermelon. It smashes things, and it does it an extremely, exceptionally good job. I tried finding and listing all the controls that this will solve for you, and it is innumerable, and it really just did not work well on the screen, so we just put the families. Realistically, if you've properly implemented Microsoft 365 plus Intune, otherwise now known formally as Endpoint Manager, you will be able to implement Zero Trust for Macs. You really do want to do this. It is an awesome solution. And let's do a quick tour of some of the things you can see from those families. Now, when it comes to audit and logging, yes, those are my logs from my Mac as of when I recorded this morning. So on the left, you see the general screen in the timeline view within Microsoft 365 for my device. And you can also then see, hey, I'm connecting from here, I'm doing this. But the nice part is when you look over to that screen on the right, when I want to see the next level of detail in that log, it's all right there. It tells me the application that's ran, what was running, if it was detected as a virus, anything like that, the IP address, ports, protocols. All of that information is made available to me as not only the CEO of Peak InfoSec, but also for an incident response, audit logging, alerting, everything else is already going into Defender for Endpoint and then can be fed into Sentinel. Now, the good news is with Defender for Endpoint, it's also got the ability to build pre-built alerts and queries off of these events going in here so we can start to even monitor things that are happening in a Mac without ever having to actually put anything on the local device. These are streaming near real time. So that's another good thing here is just how fast these are flowing up to Microsoft's cloud from the device. Now, the other part of this that really does bring in is the ability to control access to external systems. So, latest release this past spring, actually it was about a month ago, Microsoft added the ability to block categories of URLs. Yay! Not as feature depth as some of the other ones. We also overlay Cisco Umbrella for DNS filtering, which has got a far more fine-grained set of URL filtering based on the Cisco Talos categories. What it also then is, so we can block that content, but then as you see on the right, we can actually now with what used to be Microsoft 365 for Cloud or Defender for Cloud, gives me the ability to block applications on a specific basis. We're slowly transitioning and duplicating all the ones we've got in Umbrella over to here, but you can definitely start to see that not only with Umbrella blocking DNS, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Defender for Endpoint blocking URLs, websites, you're putting up a pretty solid bastion against threats, especially once you put in firewall into stealth mode so it doesn't see any incoming traffic. You're really monitoring, controlling what is going on that device. Now, the other part is with Defender for Endpoint, you do get full-blown software inventory. So I know all the applications that have been installed on my Mac. Now, once I've got software inventory, what comes next? Vulnerability management. Now, for example, this one is a little out of date. We've patched already, so non-exploitable. So you can see where we get told, hey, here's a recommendation for you at this top. Go update Safari for the Mac. There's a new release. Great. And there's also vulnerability specific to the Mac that you should update. Now, what we really like is actually on that bottom, in both of these, you see the word threats. So if it's a known threat with a known exploit, those two items underneath will pop up. You can use those also then to prioritize your patching for your devices. And this is what we use when we're patching devices. We'll look at if there's a known exploit, kit out there, and if it's a 0-day threat. We use that to drive patching and prioritization. In reality, we patch really fast because we know the threats that are out there. Now, talking patching. Yeah, this is a hurdle. Unfortunately, patching has always been the bane of IT. It always has been, always will be. I remember with Microsoft SCCM, we were lucky if we were getting a 50 to 60% patch rate. Thankfully, things have gone a long ways better than there. And we're really looking forward to Microsoft within Intune/Endpoint Manager really integrating in a patching solution for all OSs. Now, the reality for patching on a Mac today, there is a manual option. Works great if you're a small shop. Again, you're local. You can go out, reach and touch and patch. Automox is actually one we've used with a lot of our commercial clients. It's really great for hybrid business. Say that 3 times in a row. If you've got Macs, Linux, Windows, it will patch them all. And it will actually configure them all. Works really well, and it's an exceptional product. Now, if you're heavily a Mac shop, JAMF is really still going to be your best bet for that one. I'm a toss-up between which one you want to use. Both work. But the more Mac-centric you get, you've probably already got JAMF to manage them with more and more Macs. So you might as well go ahead and leverage that to do the auto patching. And then, or if you've got other things that you're using for Windows, Linux, etc. Now, we also do like to overlay Defender for Endpoint. As you saw on those previous screens, we use Defender for Endpoint to validate patching is actually going on. Unfortunately, the systems that do patch can generate false positives. It thinks it's patched it, but it didn't quite patch it completely. It's pending a reboot. You know, all those other things tend to go in. So we like to use Defender for Endpoint as that cross-check. Again, it's kind of our recommendation as we do this. So let's go ahead and sum up for today. And right off the bat, Macs can be made NIST 800-171 compliance and be ready for a CMMC compliance event. Yay. macOS, while natively harder to more secure, well, let me rephrase that. Bleh. So macOS, while natively more secure, is harder to apply separation of duties at least privilege. It's not a technical capability. It's more of a culture issue, just so you know. It's a little bit of a harder culture change. As you already saw, Microsoft 365 is a sledgehammer. We do recommend that hands down as one of the best products out there to resolve the majority of these issues for you, especially when it comes to 800-171 compliance. Patching is still a pain, and it does require appropriate tools appropriate to your environment. That's the same for Windows, Linux, and Macs. It just is. And that's kind of where we're at for that sum up. Next week, we're going to talk about the DIBCAC gaps. Boy, we have to work on enunciation before next week. Say that one 3 times in a row. And again, I'm Matt Titcomb from Peak InfoSec. Thanks for joining us for As the CMMC Churns.